Before I even get into this review of Chromacopia by Tyler Smith, let me try to hook you with a sort of large idea, kind of a theory, maybe the most shocking theory I have about this album, and I'm just going to get into it here at the beginning. There is no Jane, there is no Judy. There are many women on this album, but they are all the same one. His mother, Bonita Smith. There are several men, there's mostly Tyler, and there is no Tyler. It is just his father, who is also him. If we see the album through this lens, we can understand that this is an album of someone who is truly considering and contemplating his own existence, how he came to be, why he was raised the way that he was, how he became who he is by how he was raised, how he will age, and what that says about his own death. It is his quest to forgive his father, to forgive his mother, and ultimately to forgive himself. Thank you for auditing the Always Positive New Music Review Show, hosted by a French professor who's going on a journey with you. You see, the lighting here is pretty weird. It's because I have to record. I have a lot of pressure from my family. It's actually internal pressure to make these videos, but you know, I can't just be inside making noise. I have 3 kids inside that house. 16, 2, and 2 months old, okay? So I just can't be sitting there ringing bells and talking loud and doing all that stuff. So I have to wake up early in the morning to do these videos. It's getting later and later and later in the year, so the sun will rise while we're watching this. But I think that's a nice, I don't know, symbol, a nice kind of metaphor for this album of learning how to grow up and learning how to find home. Now, if you've been watching my videos lately, you know I've already talked about this album for like an hour and a half. I am insanely hyped to listen to this album. I'm insanely hyped to talk about it. I made 3 videos, and I want to do 2 things. I want to say, hey, watch those videos, they're great, and I also want to say, totally ignore those videos, they're pointless. I mean, they're correct individually as observation. And I tried to make some points, and I think I made a lot of very interesting points, especially about like African music and its potential influence in the song Noid. I think I did a lot of interesting stuff about fame and the song Thought I Was Dead. But in general, I was just part of the hype. And part of the hype is getting psyched and is making predictions and is thinking, what is this going to be? What is this thing going to be? Is it going to be... Sorry, my hair's really bugging me. I gotta stop looking in the mirror. What is this thing going to be? You know, and what I thought, and what I think a lot of us thought, is it was going to be one thing, one grand story about Saint Chroma. Whatever Saint Chroma is, whatever his journey is, that's what this album is going to be. It's going to be the story of the man in the mask. I was getting all ready to track down my copy of The Mystery of Caspar Hauser by Werner Herzog. I was pretty convinced that might be the theme tied in with German Expressionism. Maybe vampires and all sorts of like other themes of like, I don't know, military. And I thought it would all be about this one character, this paranoid character who's trapped in fame, and how that paranoia that he feels as a famous person is an echo of the paranoia and fear he's felt his whole life as a black man in America. And that's what I thought the album would be about. But I was wrong. I was wrong because that was just one color. Just one color. That was the color green, you know? And that's okay. That's an okay guess for me to make. The snippets that he released all did lead to that one direction. But let's go back to my first video about this album. What does the word Chromacopia mean? You know, I made this ridiculous prop, okay? And I went through a lot of different ideas of what it could mean. I focused on the suffix of opia, maybe tied into sight, maybe the whole word Chromacopia is tied into chroma key, you know, green screen used in movies. Maybe it's a place like Ethiopia or Utopia or Dystopia. And the funny thing is, if you read the comments, is it trash day? Maybe. The funny thing is, if you read the comments, a lot of people just couldn't wait. And they were just like, it just means cornucopia. It just means cornucopia. Why are you making this so difficult? Why are you missing this? And at the very end, I did talk about the idea of cornucopia. And I would have to say, even though I love to complicate things, I would love to tell you it's about sight or it's about Ethiopia. And it's not. It is just chroma as in color and copia meaning many. Many colors. A cornucopia of chroma. That's what this is. That's what this album is. It can't be just one color. It has to be many colors. Many different themes, sprawling themes that weave into each other and spiral out from each other. You can't just boil it down to one color. So what I'm going to do in this review is maybe the goofiest thing I've ever tried to do. I'm going to try to bring it the full color. I'm going to try to explain the different colors. I'm going to try to bring it to you. Now, I assign these colors rather randomly, okay? But you know, like pretty soon, when the sun rises, you're going to see fall in Western New York, and you're going to see trees, all different shades and leaves. Right now, it's just blackness. You know, so obviously, the most common one, I think, is green, the fame, the paranoia, the need for personhood. Always, almost all of these have the undercurrent of pressure. What is pressure? External pressure, internal pressure. In this case, this green is how his internal pressure to succeed then works, and he has external pressure from other people to behave in a certain way. There is red. The horniness. I was not expecting this album to be so goddamn horny. The snippets did not protect me, but it's not just about being horny. It's about the roots of horniness and the consequences of horniness. The internal pressure to nut and the external pressure to have kids and to find a monogamous relationship. Perhaps its most interesting theme is the yellow. Aging and maturing. This is a millennial album of a millennial guy who's learning how to get into his 30s. All the external pressures of aging and death and trying to lead a life of meaning and trying to mature. Orange? It is a deeply feminist album. You could do just a feminist analysis of this album. You really could. And I'm going to try to bring up all the ways that it is. And then finally, what it is to be a parent and what it is to be a child. I think it is very much an album about those things. Now, this is probably going to fall, and I'm probably going to say, gosh darn it, and it's going to be a funny thing. So we're going to have to see. That'll be the little tension for you. Okay? So that's how I see this album. All those colors. And it's funny because he presented everything in black and white. And I think that was on purpose because he called it many colors and then it was black and white and then you just see the green and then you open it up and it is just that container ship. It turns out it's filled with all these colors. But before I even get deeper into the colors or into the songs, there's another way I want to frame this album, which is its conversations with other artists. And I think this is really important. So I like to think of this album as well as a unofficial sequel, one could say, to like 4 different albums. And I'm going to go through all 4 of them right here. I think the most obvious reference that is made, and this is made by the cover, and that's why I can justify this weird lighting, because it's like a spotlight, which looks like the album cover of Tyler kind of sitting there. But I think we have to really think a lot about David Bowie and the album Heroes, and this period of time, 1977, when he also released Low. Okay, he released 2 albums in 1 year, and I don't think that this is a random, hey, this looks cool, let's try to copy it idea. Now listen, my review of Call Me If You Get Lost is one of my most successful non-beef videos. Thank you for watching. I really went deep into Charles Baudelaire. I really went deep into the concept of how is Tyler, the Creator, using the work and the thought of Charles Baudelaire. I get so many comments every year saying, you know, he just said he just picked that name randomly. It doesn't mean anything. I don't buy it. But maybe I went too far. So please don't get too scared. This is not going to be a track-by-track explanation that actually Tyler's album is just Heroes. But I think it's important to see what is this intertextuality about. Intertextuality is when one work references another work. So it can be a movie referencing a book, or it can be a book referencing a song, or it can be a song referencing another song, etc. So what does it mean that we have this? Well, first of all, the masks. So this is intentionally a pose that David Bowie is striking to imitate a comedic mask or a mask in the theater. It's as though this motion with his hand is either taking on or taking off the mask. This was an important part in his career because it was the part where he realized he was getting too old for all of the rock star stuff. He moved to Berlin, the city in Germany, And he made 3 albums. Well, he calls them the Berlin Trilogy, but the third one he called part of a trilogy for marketing purposes. It's really just these 2. This is like the kind of the Berlin duology. And the story about this is, do you know what his life was before he went to Berlin? He was living in LA, up in the hills, rich as hell, one of the biggest rock stars, famous for wearing masks and playing characters. He was Ziggy Stardust, he was Aladdin Sane, he was the Thin White Duke, he was playing all these characters. He kept putting his mask on, he had all these masks and all these characters, and he was so high on cocaine. You watch videos, interviews with David Bowie in the mid-70s, and he is like the most coked out person you have ever seen in China. He has really, it was quite fascinating thing, but it's very unpleasant. And he realized he had to make a change. So he moved to Berlin to get clean. He picked up Iggy Pop, who was also having problems getting clean, and they went and made music together. They made albums for him, and then Bowie made his own albums. So I think that's the context. I think that's what makes perhaps what makes this Chromacopia album kind of Bowie-like is it's this passage to adulthood, like trying to figure out what is it about me that needs to change into the me that will be, and also experimenting musically. I mean, okay, this is pulling it by the hairs, I'd say in France, but these albums are interesting because they're like half instrumental, sort of far out, freak out stuff, and then half kind of more standard pop songs. Maybe you could sort of say that Tyler has his kind of Igor side and his more rap side. I don't know about that, but I will say this. I do think Tyler, the Creator, is the closest thing that we have to David Bowie right now. I think in terms of his star power, his charisma, his fashion sensibility, his just unbelievable creativity and desire to constantly innovate. And also, it was a very funny thing. Yesterday, I was explaining this theory to my 16-year-old daughter, who I just see walking behind me over there. She's getting ready to go to school. And she was like, well, was Bowie bisexual? And I almost spit out my coffee, because like David Bowie was like the most famous bisexual in music, probably, you know? And I don't think that really, I'm not interested in what they do behind doors, but I do think that's important that they're both these male figures, these charismatic male figures who talk a lot about the large size of their penis. Weird coincidence there. Who like also are not afraid of kissing and having sex with men. So anyways, that's my kind of Bowie theory. But I think, and I'm definitely not the first person to say this, I do think that this is very clearly in conversation with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And I want to put this in a different way. I did a Culture United. It's like sort of like a Super Friends show with Justin Hunt and Curtis King and Rob Markman, FD Signifier. Absolutely was on it last night. It's also Jeremy Hecht sometimes, or usually, we've on it twice. Jeremy Hecht the other time, and then me. And we're kind of talking about hip hop and all this. And that was the question, like, is this his new Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers? I think it really is. And I think we need to be careful, though. And so let me nuance this general idea. First of all, if you watch his, he did like a conversation with Converse sneakers. These rich people, man. They have conversations with brands. I talked to Red Bull. You did? You talked to Red Bull? I talked to Converse. Okay? You can talk to Professor Skye mug at my store. Nice segue. And what he says all the way back in 2022, where he's talking about this album there, and he just says, honesty is awesome. Be honest with yourself, with other people. When you're younger, kids are like, what's up? You good? And like that's what he's explaining. It's the emotional depth, the emotional range that you can have when you're young, especially if you're a young man, is basically, are you good? And so Mr. Morale helped to break that and go deeper. I continue to quote, a lot of people just don't like the music. I love that album. He touches on so much. He's open and honest. Some people can't listen to it because they think he's probably looking at them in their eyes. And I think that's one of the cool differences between Chromacopia and Mr. Morale, is that Tyler never feels that way. He never feels like he's looking at you in the eyes and judging you. And I don't know if it's just his tone. Maybe it's because, he's maybe dressed wearing a funny hat. I don't know what it is, but it is interesting. And then he goes on to explain that people didn't like this album that much because they want to just keep on numbing themselves. They want to keep, they don't want to think about the things that they're covering up. I'm hard, I shoot people. And that was how he closed it, that's how people want to be. So I think that's one way, obviously, that this is a deeper Tyler, but it's also a very conscious reaction to this. And, for this whole year, we've been talking about hip-hop, what's happening in rap music, what's happening in hip-hop, what's happening, all these great changes, Read My Soul calls it the great reset, and I agree with that terminology. I think that's a good way to put it, that we're moving towards a more honest and more artistically meaningful rap music. And it's like, oh, it started in 2024? You know that meme? Is it the Great Reset? It always was. The dudes on the moon, I don't really actually get that meme. But the Great Reset actually happened in 2022. We weren't paying attention, y'all. We were too busy arguing like, is N95 a big enough hit for Kendrick to still be in the big three? Was he washed by Baby Keem? We were sitting over here as consumers, whereas artists were hearing this and going, okay. You're just going to Sgt. Pepper me. You just go ahead and Sgt. Pepper me. I'm going to have to come out with Chromacopia. He changed everything. And what's great is that 2024 is the year that we catch up to this album. It's the year where, thanks to Drake saying, hey, everybody, listen to Mother I Sober, that we realize, oh, this is not only preachy and well-produced, it is really important. And the changes that it sought to make, it made while we weren't paying attention. Also, not for nothing, 2 years ago, I remember, a couple days after this album came out, my son got in the car and said, what are people saying? Because, all my friends think it's not very good. Teenagers. They wanted a Baby Keem album, and they wanted Damn too. They didn't want whatever this was. Like, it was just a little too complex, a little too hard to chew on. I picked up my daughter the other day from Crew, and she's like, what are people saying about the Tyler album? I'm only seeing negative stuff. I was like, really? Yeah, everyone wants, better features and kind of more hits. And so I do think that's part of it, that this maturing does come at the cost of the teenage audience, which makes sense because they're in their 30s. And this is really what rap can do. Both of these albums are what rap can do. They can, because there's so many words, because they are words coming very often from people who've experienced personal trauma and generational trauma, people who have struggled with parenting issues, with fathering issues. All those things are in here, and they're in the Tyler album. I would actually say Tyler might even be more effective. There might be something a little too raw about this. You know what I mean? You don't want something too raw, something that has too much strength to it. So I have to put myself on Do Not Disturb. I keep getting text messages from that same 16-year-old daughter, probably asking me to feed the dogs because she didn't have time. Pressure. And that's what's fun, is that for the last, 10 years, whatever it's been, I think we've all been sort of wondering, like, artists who are trying to make the next To Pimp a Butterfly. And I now think that's not the question anymore. That is literally what she said. She said, can you feed the dogs? I have to mute my computer. That was what we'd sort of wonder. Like, who can do the next one of those? And very few people could. And now the question is, who's going to make the next Mr. Morale? And what's great is that it opens up a lot of things for rappers to age and to stay interesting and to do interesting things and to grow. Okay? You aging millennials? Okay, Andre 3000? We want to hear about your proctology visits. We do. I want to hear it. I still have yet to make my appointment for my colonoscopy. I have the referral number, but for some reason, every time I go to call, I do something else. Now, on the conversation yesterday, I wanted to appreciate something that Rob Markman said, where he was like, hey, but just everyone needs to remember this is not the first psychologically deep rap album. He quoted 444 by Jay-Z, some Scarface stuff, My Mind Playing Tricks on Me by Ghetto Boys. So I do think that's true. We do need to remember this isn't the first, but I would say it is the most culturally impactful example. It is the one, may not be the first, but it's the one that actually did the thing. Also, abso-fucking-lutely said the way that she phrased it was that they were both. Okay, I can't, she said it so well. If you don't watch her stuff, you really should. She does really good stuff. She does like. She's like a strategist, so she approaches cultural issues in hip hop through the lens of strategy. It's very interesting stuff. If you like people over the age of 30 who are super educated, talking about rap music in ways where you go, oh, cool, then you should check her out. But she referred to it as a first big step towards emotional maturity. And it was that term, it was that first big step. I think that's the strength of how she worded it. It's the first big step. In both, I would say that Mr. Morale is maybe the fifth and sixth big step, but this Tyler album, it's like his first, and it's a big step, especially if you're a young man, especially if you're a young man who's been famous since he was a teenager and you have millions of dollars and people all around you telling you to be wild and cool and crazy and kooky and wild and nuts. Like, that first step is a gigantic step, and that's what I think this album is. Also, not for nothing, and I understand he's not a popular person to talk about, but this album is also very Donda. You can't have an entire album where your mom speaks the entire way through, and a lot of it is a meditation on your relationship to your mother, and not pay some respect to some of the emotionally honest work that Kanye West did before he lost his battle with mental health. Okay? Like, Kanye's ghost is all over this album. Everywhere. Now listen, most people hear Pharrell, and that makes sense because I do think Pharrell is a larger influence in terms of production and perhaps in terms of style and lifestyle and all that. But we just need to respect the fact that I really think Kanye's ghost is all over the place. And if I could go a little far out there, there's several references to Michael Jackson. I sort of wonder if Kanye really is the next Michael Jackson. You know, somebody whose personal life accusations or whatever, true or not, like, taints their work, but that you cannot replace the amazing impact they had. But that's just a little point. I'm not going to come back to Donda. All of you who have Professor Skye bingo, okay? Let's see, we got my baby monitor, all right? We've got me mentioning Kanye. So we'll see. We'll see if we get to the rest of the bingo sheet. But finally, and I think this is the most clear, this album is a sequel to Call Me If You Get Lost. This is I'm Calling You When I Got Found. Okay, this is, you know, and it's fun because it's kind of like the way that these two albums are sort of paired together. I think we can see Call Me If You Get Lost and Chromacopia as together, because this really is, you know, this wonderful, awesome album really is about a luxurious life of having no home, no house, nowhere to go. You know, that's what it's about. It's about, like, having jeeps and yachts and trips to the south of France and all of these invitations au voyage, you know, and you're getting to go all these places and do all these wonderful things, and he's like trying, you know, keep up with me. But then this is the morning after. This is the morning after the 3-week trip to Ibiza, okay, or to Nice. This is like, I hope you find your way home. I was actually thinking it'd be really cool if the last song on this album were called I Hope You Find Your Way Home. And then I realized it is. Call Me If You Get Lost, I Hope You Find Your Way Home. That right there is that's sort of the direction for any young person. Okay, I have 2 kids who are teenagers, and I have 2 kids who are like little children. I have one son who's, you know, he's off in Maryland. He's doing his thing. So, like, call me if you get lost, you know? Call me if you get lost, son. You know, I hope you have interesting experiences. I hope you learn who you are as a man. I hope you figure out that all the lessons I was trying to teach you were actually pretty good, and that the points that I was making wasn't just I was trying to control you, it's I was trying to help you grow up to be a happy person. And then, when you're out there, I hope you find your way home. And I don't mean here. It doesn't have to be on this porch, but home, the theoretical home, the idea of home. I'm not talking about house. I don't want my children to find their way house. I want them to find their way home. I remember very specifically as a as a 20-year-old, 22-year-old, 23-year-old, I used to write music, you know, and I would write songs about not having a home and being unable to stop. I have a lyric, I think it was something like, I'm like a shark, I just have to move to keep the peace. That was just how I felt, and I needed to find my way home. Speaking of my daughter, who didn't feed the dogs, she also wants to tell everybody that she thinks that Igor is a really big influence on this album as well. I don't know. I don't really vibe with Igor as much as I do with his other stuff, but she was saying in terms of the soundscape and perhaps the audience that it attracted. The fifth thing that it's a lot about are the Jetsons. The TV show, The Jetsons. If you like what you see so far, smash like bucket, subscribe. I can see the sun is starting to come out. Are you enjoying this journey? Tell me in the comments if this lighting is just, if it just ruins the whole video for you, but it's gonna get good soon. The sun is gonna find its way home. If you like what you hear, smash like bucket, AVAA is how you say awesome video as always. You put that in the comment section. I will always heart them, okay? So let's get to the album, huh? Let's get to it. Let's actually get to the music with the track Saint Chroma, which really starts off with this blue mother's advice. This mother's advice, which is going to be throughout the album. You are the light. It is not on you. It is in you. And don't in your motherfucking life dim your light for anybody. Beautifully said. I love this idea because the album is a lot this kind of green paranoia theme of the light is on me at all times, much like this terrible ring light, which I cannot wait to turn off because all I see is circles when I blink. It's tough being a YouTuber. Hassan Abi's right. This is harder than coal mining. You know, like this like, it's not the light on you, it's light in you. And this album is sort of mainly about that, like Tyler's light. Where is it going to go? Where is it going to be? Now, I already did an entire video about this song. The things that I noticed on these re-listens. First of all, I need to say something. Thank you, Tyler, for giving us snippets and not singles. Very cool idea, because then when you listen to the full song, you get something new. Okay, I really like that idea. But also, I kind of wish he didn't release any singles because these songs are some of the best songs on the album, or any snippets, and like they are a part to me. And the album flows so well together that it's hard for me to feel it like a part. You know what I'm saying? It's a little like, I don't know. So I tried to like reset my brain and pretend like I'm hearing the songs for the first time. I love this organic feet sound of this marching like percussion. It's a little bit off. You can tell it's not, you know, pitched and pocketed. You know it's not, this isn't some kind of like, you know, a perfectly Pro Tooled thing. It's interesting that the verse is like not super important, I don't think. You know, it's sort of about his car. I think this, a lot of this beginning is sort of him flexing and sort of trying to go from a sort of call me if you get lost position. You know, he starts right off talking about his LaFerrari or his Enzo, whichever Ferrari he's talking about. And we're going to talk about that in a second. You know, talk about loving Pharrell. There's also, remember how I was talking about like the dichotomy of the album? It's something I picked up this morning. Yes, I woke up this morning, I ate one single s'mores Pop-Tart, made myself coffee. I'm not sponsored by s'mores. But there's two different heys in this album. There's the hey, 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 you know, which is like the kind of like get psyched, the 2 and the 4, hey. I think it's actually a sample. I don't think it's people saying. I think it's him hitting it on a computer. It's all the way throughout the album. You hear the hey, hey, but then there's also kind of a hey, which is very similar for those of you who played Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda, N64. I almost 100%ed it back in the late 90s, but my brother asked for me to return it, and then I had like 10 Poes left, and he returned it to GameStop for store credit. So I've never completed that game. Anyways, there's this little tiny fairy that goes, hey, all the time. And so to me, I feel like this album is like, the hey is like that pressure that's throughout the album. Like the hey is like a little reminder of what you should be doing, and the hey is sort of like the hedonistic pleasure and just like the joy of I don't know, just hard rapping and just hard music. And then we get this whole theme sung by Daniel Caesar. Can you feel the light? Can you feel the fire? That's the light inside. And when these drums come in, You're telling me that this segue into this drum line could exist without the work of Kanye West? Are you out of your mind? Is this not like the coolest Yeezus style? Like, what? We get another part to the song, and this part of the song is even more badass than the first part of the song that I thought could not be more badass. These drums are so hard. And then we have all these themes about looking in the mirror and not liking how it's going and wondering if you should put out your light, and his mother saying he's special and the importance of hubris. All of this is in this song. And then it basically gets kind of like gospel-y until it gets interrupted, bam, right away with ratata. So this is, I think, a very Outkast style beat. It reminds me a lot of You and Me. What's that song called? Okay, what is the song You and Me by Outkast actually called? Elevators. Elevators. Yeah, like those. It feels very similar to that, and I suppose that it also is similar to. There's that kind of like futuristic funk of Pharrell that I feel throughout this album a lot. These great wild synths that are woozy and droning, kind of unsettling sounds too. This great, wood block, real baby talk wood block on the 3 and this bumping bass and that 2 and the 4. Hey, hey, hey. And, it's funny because a lot of this album is about having children and whether or not you should, or the decision to have children. And I've been listening to it since it came out, and I spend most of my days either at work or with my toddler. And so, we were listening to this song, and she had Cookie Monster, and we were just having a little Cookie Monster dance party. Like this song forever will be the Cookie Monster song, which actually makes sense. Ra-ta-ta, me like ra-ta-ta. And that's like the joy. And I made an Instagram post, ChromaKopia. Join my Instagram if you haven't. It's pretty funny. I made a little meme there of Cookie Monster doing the album cover. And I did that because it's like, it's hard. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of work. You don't get to record in your living room anymore. You have to use a stupid ring light. You have to be freezing your hands off in the late fall here in Rochester, New York. Mid-fall, let's be honest. But it is still like the great joy you can have is sharing the music. But that's one of my general themes. Don't have kids. Do not have kids if you don't want them. But if you want them, it's great. Don't let people tell you how bad it is. It's not. It's awesome. It's also interesting. The first thing he says is the crib is so big, I need a diaper and a sippy cup. Very tied into these themes of parenthood and the themes of babyhood. He's often referring to himself throughout the album as a baby or as somebody who needs to be a big boy. It's very conscious, it's very well made, it's very well thought out because it's about how he's trying to move out of an infantile position. And it's, about it's like, I think there's supposed to be a connection between how his mother thinks he's so special and how special he thinks he is. And how that maybe that gets mixed in with some insecurity, maybe comes from societal feelings, or maybe from not having his father around, whatever reasons one might be insecure, and then that sort of gets transferred to where you're like, you grow up thinking you're special, but then you're also insecure. It's a very millennial issue here. It is, and I can say that because I'm an Xer, but towards the end of the Xer. And he talks a lot about. There's a whole theme on here of loving cunnilingus, which I think talking about cunnilingus is just inherently feminist because, especially in rap spheres, there have been many songs that are just like, I don't do that. That realm of human pleasure, I hate. That's a huge theme in here. And it's great because he defers to Kendrick. He straight up says, I'm the biggest out the city after Kenny. He says it very clearly. Precisely, I am not Kendrick. I am not as great as him, which is interesting. We were talking about this yesterday in the Culture United, what's the purpose of these battles? And the hip-hop is a competitive art. And I don't think he's giving up the competition, but I think he's also just recognizing how great Kendrick is. What I love about this is this chorus. It shows insane weakness, but it's delivered in such a badass way that you don't even notice it. She ain't never met no one who talked like that. And if you hang up on me, I'll call you right back. Weird flex, not a flex. If you have to hang up on someone and they call you right back, it means do not pick up the phone. Boundaries, baby, boundaries. Important to human relationships. Hanging up is a boundary. You do not get permission to talk to me in the way that you are talking to me. I get to determine when I'm in a conversation and when I am not. And he's like, imagine it this way. It's supposed to be like, and if you hang up on me, I call you right back. Imagine it's like this. And if you hang up on me, I'll call you right back. Please pick up. Please pick up. That's really what he's saying. And this beautiful section at the end where he talks about, and I'm paranoid now because people, I'll just say that instead of the N-word, are weird and really bums. Weird and really bums. Weird and really bums. Just keeps on saying weird and really bums. Weird and really bums. And we ended this whole paranoid theme. It feels very graduation-y too. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep mentioning Kanye West because he's that important. And I'm also going to whisper. We get to Noid, which I already discussed in some length. This triumphant new intro, though, this Black Sabbath heavy metal intro, where like they're playing with the knobs in the studio. This, I think, is very connected to that feeling special and not special at the same time. On these listens, I noticed how weird the time signature is. This great rising tone in the second verse, which just builds into this pressure, because it's all about this pressure. It seems like he's only ever not feeling pressure when he's flexing and when he's stunting, you know? And what I like about this is that these themes this is not, Tyler, the Creator, is not the first rapper to talk about having fake friends and women who try to entrap him by having a baby. This is a fairly common theme. And he says these things, and I think he's saying them almost satirically because the rest of the album is building these themes out. It's like building on these themes and deepening them, as we'll see. This whole like, don't trust these bitches, they'll strap you. Like he's gonna have an entire song about the reality of that and how it's much better, how it's much deeper. Then the mother saying not to trust anyone. Here's a question. Are we supposed to think, is the mother a good guy or a bad guy in this story? Okay? I'm not sure. I mean, this is a very frank portrait, and just for full transparency, I recorded an entire album about my mom when I was 23, 24. It's on Bandcamp. It's one of the few things I've released of my old music. Because I had to try to mediate my relationship with my mom somehow. I just didn't know how to do it. I'll make an album about it. I like this because, you know, when I gave her that album, she was like, is everything okay, Skye? Like, she could feel that there was a lot of anger in there. The way these things are taken, the way these quotes are taken, I think this album is very healing because she's on the album a lot, but I don't think you're supposed to just purely see it as a good. I think you're supposed to see it as like a, oof, I'm not really sure about that parenting decision. And talking about don't trust anyone and all this, like the fierceness, and I don't want to have to F anybody up. And this great kind of like rapping without drums on the second half, and this over-exaggerated me, and this crazy awesome compressed drum beat. We go back to this march. Again, the snippets made you think this whole album is going to be some militaristic thing with all these marches and hut 2, 3, 4, hut 2, 3, 4, but not really. Kind of singing, exaggerated, get away from me, don't take pictures. If you haven't seen my video on Thought I Was Dead, you should watch it because I tell the Dave Chappelle story. The time where I didn't meet Dave Chappelle. It's a fascinating story. You can scrub through it. I'm holding up my finger like this for the entire story. It's really fun, but I don't have time to talk about it now. Let's see, do I have time to talk about anything? She's rolling around, but she's not standing up. That's when I really got to go up there. Next track is called Darling I, Sober. No, it's not Darling I, Sober. I think it's pretty clear, though, having a song that has something, I, that's a reference, I believe, to Mother I Sober, or at least following that convention, featuring Tizo Touchdown. Horniness and its root causes. That's what this album feels like. You know, and the mom says, don't ever tell a woman that you love her unless you mean it, you know, and very kind of Igor style with these outcast drums, and this is like not what I like about Tyler, but I certainly respect it. And then in the back, there's just the full-on quoting of Pharrell's beat to Drop It Like It's Hot, the song, by Snoop Dogg. Whatever it is, however they do that, I don't know if they actually get songwriting credit for it, but like it just is that song. Ooh, it's nice with the light off, isn't it? Sunrise, leaves falling, Chromacopia. And then these themes kind of continue with the paranoia and okay, so this is the whole idea. I think like the paranoia and the pressure that he's feeling. I think he's having trouble making relationships to people. I think a lot of this album is about having trouble making relationships to people. I think a lot of it has to do with how he feels about his mother and how his mother is with his father and how his father was to him. And so I think the whole time he's like talking about like how he can't do these things, how he can't find a home, right? Meaning like he can't find a partner and a kind of stable life, but it's sadness behind it. So when he starts off this verse, I drive my Beamer in the summer when I'm ready to drift. LaFerrari handle better and it's pretty as shit. Feel safe in the rules. Big boy when I drive. Love them all for different reasons at the same time. What's that about? He's got cars. He's got a lot of cars and they're really expensive. Big boy? Big boy when I drive? Keep paying attention to all these references where he infantilizes himself because he's recognizing that his attachment to cars and his inability to form attachment, meaningful monogamous attachment to women is a result of his immaturity, of his childishness. This is the origin of the horniness. It's not just that he wants to nut, it's that he can't like make these connections with people. And he feels like a big boy. I just want to say one more thing. I think there's another secret code in this album. And I think that secret code is he is ready for monogamy. He is ready. It's just he needs to transfer his love for his Ferrari to a love of a woman. He talks about his Ferrari from the beginning, the middle, to the end. It is a car which, I don't know, cost $4 million. It is the kind of car that you cannot just buy. You have to earn the right to pay someone $4 million to buy their car. And you have to pay $10,000 every time you get an oil change, something crazy like that, okay? The way he talks about this car, he constantly brings it up as the thing that he has instead of children, as the thing he has instead of relationships. And here in the beginning, he's talking about these 4 different cars that he has. But for the rest of the album, he doesn't talk about the Beamers and the Rolls. He maybe mentions a Lamborghini once, but he's really, 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 really on the Ferrari. So I think he's moving towards it. And this is his step, is that he just needs to figure out how to trust and love someone as much as he loves his car. Forever is too long, kind of like these sort of like stock attacks on monogamy, that ish not for me, one option for everybody, don't you lie to me, too many grooves, I'm too curious to try to be, hiding things, feeling shame built inside of me. And this whole, you can read it on the face value as being like, okay, this is a reasonable attack on monogamy. Okay, just so you know, I'm a big monogamist. I really believe in monogamy. I think it's great. It just requires a lot of therapy and work, and a lot of people don't want to do therapy and work. So if it's not for you, it's not for you. I'm not saying it has to be for everybody, but I think it's great. But I understand the criticisms, and this is the criticisms, but I also think we're supposed to read the criticisms as being unsure, like he kind of knows. And you know that because it ties in a little bit to the age and maturity bell, that yellow. When that gray hair finally come, at least I felt something. If I ain't felt the one, no one could fulfill me like this music-ish does, so I'll be lonely with these Grammys when it's all said and done. Beautiful lyric, sad lyric, and it doesn't have to be that way. You have to figure out how to create those attachments in your life. You have to do enough work on yourself to be able to find someone to do those attachments. And then, hey, this channel is awesome. I love this channel. I have almost 130,000 subscribers. Please subscribe if you're not. But it's not. I could have 10 million followers. I could be Jake Paul. I could be Jake Beast. Seriously, I could be Jake Beast. That's the merging of Jake Paul. It's coming in the next couple of years. I read a memo. You know, I could be Jake Beast, and I would not be as happy as I will be in 45 minutes when I see my wife and she wakes up with our new baby. And she's probably going to be grumpy as hell because I was up late last night and I'm up early this morning and I'm putting way too much focus into my channel and not enough on... Did I make the oatmeal? I did. I made the oatmeal, so that's fine. But like, that's the joy in life. It's not Ferraris. But he's moving towards there. And apparently there's a sample from the drum line off the Violator album, Five Rand Thing, the Q-Tip beat. I don't know, I talked about that recently. So that's just a great beat. Just Five Rand Thing. Oh man, that's such a great song. Then we get to the song, Hey Jane. We are deeply in feminist territory here, while also horniness and its consequences. Very Igor soundscape, looping left to right, really restrained bass, little bass breakdown between verses. Hey, more Navi haze, the mom saying, always wear a condom. Good advice. There's so much in this song. You know, it's got the horniness, it's got the questions of maturing, it's got the feminist aspect, and it's got the blue. It's got the question of parenthood. This song has almost everything that the album has. The only thing it doesn't have is the Paranoia. It's not really in there. Although, I guess it connects to the song Noid, where he talks about a bitch strapping you. So we'll throw that on there as well. We've now heard all of the copious chromas in this album. And it's this dialogue about an unwanted pregnancy. We cry together a little bit. I mean, not as harrowing, but it's a difficult, real conversation that people have, an adult conversation between a man and a woman in a relationship. But what I love about this is they are both literally doing the best. They are both like reading a script written by a psychologist for what you should say for an unexpected pregnancy. I mean, first we had this whole theme of we can both relate, our daddy's gone. That leads to my opening theory that Jane is his mom and Tyler is his dad, that this whole song is the conversation that led to his own birth. Now, I believe it happened to him, and I believe he's talking about him, and I believe there is a Jane, even if her name isn't Jane, right? But that's what this is about, and that's how you know, because in both verses, we can both relate to both our daddies gone. She says, I can raise it alone. That's what my mom did. Like, this is about single parent mothers and how they get to be that way and what the father's role is in it. It's all this question of accountability and weight, and it's a shortcut to forever. And they're talking it through as a couple, you know, like, we don't know each other. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. You know, my family will be happy. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of stressed out. But what he does that's amazing is he focuses on her feelings, which is the beautiful thing, which is what you have to do. I effed up, I'm stressed out, I'm dead inside. But Jane, who am I to come and bitch and complain? You got to deal with mental and physical change, the heaviest emotion, physical pain, just to give the kid, the man, last name. F that. That's why I called Tyler Okonma Tyler Smith at the beginning of this album. Because he's saying that that shouldn't be, that he should actually have a different last name. Picasso dropped his father's name, by the way. His name should have been Pablo Ruiz. He had 17 middle names. Picasso was his mother's side, and so he went with Picasso to say F you to his dad. Because Picasso was an asshole. Because his dad was an asshole. Anyways, why am I talking about Picasso? Those aren't on my notes. I'm just so happy I got to turn the ring light off. I still only see circles. It's like a freaking disco donut inside my brain. And then the second verse comes from her perspective. The guitars on here sound a little bit like African-style guitars. I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading too far into that. I probably am. But again, she's doing everything right. She's understanding his perspective. She's saying she can do it alone. She's saying she doesn't need money. My mom did it. Your mom did it. This ain't a pride thing. It's great because Tyler talks about didn't have daddies, and she talks about moms doing it alone. Like, they both talk about their own experience, and it's this whole cycle of single mothers, and it's not judgment. It's just like these things happen. It's a lose-lose. And then the repetition over and over again of no pressure. That's the most important thing in this whole album, it seems, is pressure. This is how do you deal with the pressures of sex? How do you deal with the pressures of aging? How do you deal with the pressures of fame? How do you deal with the pressures of wanting to be or not wanting to be a parent? How do those, I wish that was an octave. How do you put all of those things How do you live with all that pressure? That's what adulthood is. When you're young, you just get to be free and Wolfgang, Wolfgang, woo, 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 I'm wild and crazy. I'm skateboarding with my hat sideways. You know, that's what you get to be. But the older you get, so much pressure. So much pressure. She's good. Still laying down. What I love is that, like, he is becoming his own absent father. And it's like, this is sort of like discussed in Darling I, and it's all about her decision, and it's beautiful. Now listen, why did he pick the name Jane? Now there is one reason, but also, not for nothing, but EPMD has 8 songs called Jane. I think that might be part of it. MC Shan, I had the CD somewhere, it's not here, has a song called Jane, Stop This Crazy Thing. I don't know. I don't know if that's the other part. That's what I thought, but it's not actually that. It's because there's an abortion clinic in New York City called Hey Jane. I'm not sponsored. Okay? I don't do sponsorships. I'm not going to talk to you about VPNs. I might tell you not to gamble on sports. Do not gamble on sports. It is class war, and you are losing. Okay? But there's an election on Tuesday, and do not get it twisted. I am very upset at the way the Biden-Harris administration is handling the Gaza genocide. Very, very upset. But this song exists because there's a choice. This is a song about a choice. What is the woman going to choose? What is the man going to choose? The woman is going to choose whether or not this thing inside of her will be carried to term, and the man will choose if he is going to be with her, or they're going to choose together if he is going to be with her. Pay attention to popular culture. Listen to that Glorilla album. There are references to getting her tubes tied. There are references to Plan B. There's all these references to childbirth and unwanted pregnancies because we are living in a time where a woman's right to choose has been restricted and will continue to be, depending on how things go on Tuesday, women might legitimately lose their right to their own bodily autonomy. This song is not overtly political, but it is implicitly political because this isn't a song. Potentially, this is not a song in 2 years because there's no question whether or not you are going to keep it because you will not have the choice. That choice was made for you. Okay? Don't you dare call yourself a feminist and not vote against the monsters that are trying to take this away. Okay? God damn it. I'm nervous. You know? Because that's the thing that Tyler the Creator's doing that's doing so well. And I think maybe even better than Kendrick does, is he's a humanist. He sees people as human beings. He talks about people as human beings. He works with them as human beings. And if we accept the fact that women are human beings, then we have a moral obligation to treat them as human beings. That's the whole nature. That's what being woke is. That's what being a leftist is just believing that people who live in America, no matter how the hell they got here, live here and they are human beings. And people who have different color skin, no matter how different color skin is, are human beings. It's humanity. That's what we're fighting for. It's a fight for humanity. Anyways. And then, what? We just go way off. We go off with the song I Killed You. Listen, the beat is so good, so funky, so complicated percussion, all these swirling sounds, this great guitar. This might be my favorite song on the album that also I wish wasn't on the album because it doesn't really fit with the rest of the themes. Sure, if you're talking about black hair, it's inherently feminist because black women bear the burden of European beauty standards more than black men do. But it's an entire song that is just all about the way that black people treat their hair to make it look more European. And that's what is being killed. And it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful allegory. If you're white out there, statistically you probably are, it's the easiest way for us to understand something that we'll never understand. Like, you'll never understand alterity if you are not othered, right? Alterity means being othered, right? Being treated as like not human, right? Because you're different. You're different. You are other, right? So if you are the default mode of just white person, you never have to think about this. But like, when I saw the documentary Black Hair, and then before that, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, which is the most important book you can have in any bookshelf. People ask me, what book should I have? Make sure you have a copy of Autobiography of Malcolm X. That was where I learned this whole thing about the pressure that, like, black people are born and then they are expected to do something very important and meaningful about the way their hair looks that communicates their blackness or their lack of blackness or their ability to adapt to society or their desire to rise in some kind of hierarchical system. And it's all right there just on top of their head and they can't do anything about it, and it's been there for centuries and they have to deal with it, and it's a thing they have to think about all the time. It's a little thing that just buzzes around in their head, and they either, even if they're ignoring it, they have to actively ignore it because it's so ingrained in the society. That helped me to understand. I'm going to quote the autobiography of Malcolm X because this is an important section of the book where he is still Malcolm Little at this time, around the time where my step-grandfather probably yelled the N-word at him while he was getting out of work at the Parker Hotel in Boston. Weird story. I never met my step-grandfather, by the way, but apparently nice guy, racist. What are you gonna do? Or maybe not racist, I don't know. My cousin came up and yelled at me saying he wasn't racist. What do I know? I never met the guy. This is the point. Autobiography of Malcolm X, he talks about how, because it was the fashion back then to straighten your hair out, even if you were a man, and you had to use lye, which is this very terrible substance. You remember in Fight Club when they burn their hands, that whole thing? Like, that was what you'd have to put in your hair. And this is the way Malcolm X describes it in his autobiography, co-written by Alex Haley. I'm not going to do a voice. I'm really tempted to do a Denzel Washington impersonation, but I don't feel like that going wrong. That going wrong would be very wrong. This was my first really big step towards self-degradation. When I endured all of that pain, literally burning my flesh to have it look like a white man's hair, I had joined that multitude of Negro men and women in America who are brainwashed into believing that black people are inferior and that white people are superior, that they will even violate and mutilate their God-created bodies to look pretty by white standards. That's why the word is kill. That's why it's so strong. And it's such an enjoyable little groove here, little a cappella sounds here. Then we get to Judge Judy. A very feminist song, and about horniness, its consequences, and its roots. Back to the album, okay? We had the little I Killed You sidebar there. Crazy, breezy, easy bass and flutes. And it's this it's funny because I think this is my least favorite song on the album, but last night when I went to bed, it's like, Judge Judy, Judge. So maybe I actually like this song. And it's, okay, it has two parts. The first part is the sex story, and it's about the importance of not slut-shaming. Because, this is true. Women like sex. They do. They love it, as a matter of fact. It's part of the reason why human beings exist, because we all like sex this much, But women are encouraged not to like sex, or encouraged to pretend like they don't like sex, and are definitely not encouraged to seek sex with many different partners. That's part of the whole patriarchy thing that we got going on here. So this whole thing about having random sex with a woman is this actually very important feminist statement, because what he says in the middle of it is, just like me. Finding your humanity in other people, just like me. Just like me. That's what it is. That's weird because, he says Judge Judy, who's like this wrinkled, mean, judgmental lady who is on TV, and then he sings about cunnilingus, so I can't get the image of Tyler, the Creator, performing cunnilingus on Judge Judy out of my head with his Chromacopia hair. Listen, he's painting the pictures. Now I put them in your head, okay? Is someone on DeviantArt? Don't. But can we make this a thing? Could that have been the album cover? There might have been a lawsuit. And then there's this break. No pressure. Again, comes back in. All these kind of orgasm sounds in the back. And then the twist is that she's dying and she has cancer. And I'm of two minds of this twist. On the one hand, good, you know, great. It's great because, you know, enjoy every sandwich, as Warren Zevon said. You should treat everybody like they're about to die. You should treat everyone's decision like they're about to die because we're all about to die, shithead. If you're watching this, you got maybe, if you're super lucky, 80 years left. I got maybe, if I'm lucky, 40 years left. You know what I'm saying? Man, we're all dying. We're all dying. It's how are you going to live your life? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? So don't judge Judy. But on the other hand, I don't like it because it's like that shouldn't have to be a justification. It feels like it's a justification. Like, oh, so if she wasn't dying of cancer, then you would judge Judy? I don't think that's what it is, but I don't really know. And also, finally, the Jetsons. What's up? Meet George Jetson. Jane, his wife. His boy, Elroy. Daughter, Judy. So the daughter's name is Judy, and the wife's name is Jane, and we have Hey Jane, and we have Judge Judy. I don't know. The Jetsons was a cartoon. Okay. I thought about doing a whole hour and a half video about just the Jetsons, but I'll save that for Patreon. We get to Sticky. Oh my God. It's feminist and it's horny. It's both. The hey are back. It's getting sticky. It's funny because my 2-year-old has this habit of eating apples, and she just carries them over to the couch, and I just don't have the patience to always tell her no, because she's eating an apple. We're listening to Tyler. We're really happy, and then she dropped the apple, and I'm just like, it's getting sticky, because like the apple like fell on the couch, and it actually got sticky. Had a little dance party again. Really great song. What I like is that like. Okay, so sticky is confusing because sticky can mean to fight. So there's a whole way of reading the song that's about getting ready to be in a fight, knock if you buck, all that stuff. Or it can be like, you know, sexual secretions. It can be sticky in that way. And so when he says get a mop, it's like get a mop as in like get a gun, because that's a word for guns, because there's too many words for guns. But then it's also like in the context of the song WAP, where you need a mop because the woman is so sexually excited that there's too much vaginal secretion everywhere, right? That's the whole idea, right? I promise I will not say secretion again. So it's kind of that mixture of those things. So you can read it as a fight song or you can read it as a sex song. But if you read it as a sex song, it's fun because then the previous song gave you the justification, like gave you a whole deep psychological analysis of the joy of sex and as a way of enjoying life. And if you're denying yourself sex, then you're denying yourself joy. Very sort of Pharrell style beats. Reminds me a lot of Timing, you know, or Grinding. I mainly know the E40 remix of that song. I think it's called Timing. No, Grinding. One of them. You know, the banging on the tables one. You know, the clip song. Anyways, it feels a lot like that. Then like a drum line. There's so much. There's this Young Buck sample. Get Buck. It's kind of reminds you of Call Me If You Get Lost, of like calling back to like old like 2000s Southern rap music, which is looked down on as being stupid, and he's kind of elevating it by using it here. There's just so much to this song. The other day, I was explaining to my son the Thong Song by Cisco. There's a song that came out in the late 90s about thongs that is the most epic song ever written about anything, okay? The fanfare to Star Wars has got nothing on the Thong Song, okay? It is the most epic song ever written. It is sweeping, cinematic, gorgeous, entirely about women's underwear. Awesome song. This has a little bit of that feeling because it's just so big and so modular and so many. It's a posse cut. It's a posse cut because we have Glorilla, Lil Wayne, Sexy Red. You know, it's like an actual posse cut, but it doesn't feel that way because it's so modular. You never get tired of it. It's like a great posse cut that you never get tired of. And everyone's coming in and out, and they all just sound great. It's like this great party, and we're fighting and fucking the whole way through. It's awesome. It's getting sticky, and the whistling. And then take your mask off. Now we're just full on grow, mature. This is basically the middle of the album. basically the heart of the album. Sweet melody on the synths, just great drums. Each verse is from a different person. The first one is someone play acting as like a gangster who has a nice life, but he sort of gets stuck into pretending he's a gangster, and he ends up having to go to jail. Take your mask off. Stop trying to pretend to be hard. Kind of like his quote when he was talking to Converse Shoes about, you know, not being able to hear this album because you just want to say, I shoot people. You have to find yourself. I'm not talking too much about French right now, except to say in the 17th century, they were fascinated by the theme of masks. The expression is être et paraître, to be and to seem. And they were fascinated with people who removed their masks, because society back then, you had to always wear a mask and never really present how you really felt about anything, because it was all intrigue and masking your emotions and all those things. So the actual being, the être of a person was really important. And this is an album, this is a song, this is an artist who's just saying, take that mask off, and who are you underneath? Then we get to a preacher. So a preacher who preaches against homosexuality, who is in fact gay, but says, fucking them boys? Like, are you talking about like a pedophile priest? In which case, don't take your mask off. I mean, yeah, take your mask off in jail, but anyways. Maybe he means that like just men, who knows. And we have the whole, like, basically he tries to take the perspective of a housewife, a rich housewife, and how she's not happy. But you know, from the second you hear this song, that he's going to turn it on him. He's going to turn it on himself. That's the most important thing he can do. He's always going to bring it to himself. He talks about having erectile dysfunction. Hey, everyone, don't drink. Don't drink too much. Keep good cardiovascular health. Men, I'm not joking around. Drinking seems like a lot of fun. You want to avoid these problems, don't drink. Don't drink to excess. Cardiovascular health. He talks about his hair falling out. That's just genetics. You know, just he keeps like getting worse and worse. The drums are out at the beginning here. That rising sound in the back comes back. He talks about how he's not a great rapper. He talks about how he's trying to sell clothes and no one's buying them, and how he's a failure, and he's not even ready to be number one, and the songs aren't placing, and his raps aren't ranking, and his stage presence isn't there, and he's fake crying. Like, this is the equivalent of staring into the mirror and just losing your mind, just saying how much you hate yourself and how selfish you are. And this is what you have to do. You actually have to do that. You have to do a full inventory and realize the ways that you're a failure, and the ways that you're a liar, and the ways that you're a hypocrite, and the ways that you're selfish, and then break through it. Like, you just have to acknowledge them and then move on. And he's at that point of acknowledging. As Absa said on the video yesterday, on the round table, the first big step. The first big step is saying you're lying. Talked about not wanting to be a parent, talking about this whole theme that goes throughout the album, this potential, just wanting his Grammys. Then we get to the song Tomorrow. We're really in that yellow mode. I need a grandchild. This whole idea of what's coming tomorrow. It's building to. Do you see how these songs mix together? Like Paranoid came right off Ratata, which came right off St. Chroma. Like, there's these little segues where each song kind of leads into the next, except for I Killed You. That's the kind of break in the album. And then but Tomorrow just leads right in from Take Your Mask Off. This falsetto singing, My Mother's Hands Don't Look the Same. These hands, do you understand that when you're a father, your hands become super strength? I don't know what it is, but your hands become little sausages. I don't know what happens. I used to have such delicate hands. I now have baseball mitts, okay? Freaking Mookie Betts hands. I don't know what it is, but when you become a parent, maybe it's because you get older, maybe it's because you have to carry things. Like, your hands become, and mother's hands get older. And it's one of the things, that's part of the reason why older women wear gloves, because it's the thing you can't hide. You can't actually hide age from your hands. You just can't. These jet black stands turning gray. Aging and maturity. I'm gaining weight. I'd rather rest. Thought of children brings me stress because time is changing. So it's just all these issues with just trying to figure it out. He's just really meditating. Who am I going to be as I get older? It's a midlife crisis. He's talking about this new version of himself. He's talking about his friend who had a baby, and all I've got is a picture of my Rari in some silly suits. Little side note, I looked up his Ferrari, and it takes you to a Ferrari Reddit page. And on that Reddit page is some guy's like, nice car, but this dude does not know how to dress. Why is he dressed like that? It's like, you're talking about Tyler, the Creator. You just thought he was just some guy with a car. If it wasn't sort of tacitly racist, it'd be kind of funny. And again, it's that whole idea of like, I don't have a relationship, I have my Ferrari. I don't have a baby, I have my Ferrari. And it's about pressure. It's about this pressure that he feels. What's he going to do with this pressure? Well, he might freak out, and the fame might get him, and we might get into Thought I Was Dead, featuring Schoolboy Q, really just straight up in this fame and paranoia, fame and paranoia, fame and paranoia. Starts off with a recreation of this army guy, Jonathan Michael Fleming, who does like army calls and responses as albums. You don't want to war with a soldier. But he's also talking about No Limit, so I think I think you're supposed to be thinking about No Limit. You're supposed to be thinking about Master P. These like Mexican horns and these trumpets, just a full head nod song. I don't think it's a coincidence that Schoolboy Q is on this album, because Schoolboy Q probably released the best rap album of the year. If he didn't, then someone else did, and I'll tell you who that is in a second. But I think Tyler knows that he needs to be working with the best people and right in his lane. And just a great, quick verse, awesome. Halfway through, the snippet begins, and then we get to Like Him. Oh my God. Oh my God. Maturing, aging, and parenthood. The simple piano, this whole discussion that the mother gives of the father. Cuts off when she says, you look just like him, flat feet, big dick. The sexualization of her son, it's not good. It's not like cute, it's not funny. I am so not in the place to discuss this. But if it gives you the ick, you should listen to that ick. Anyways, I'm not gonna harp on it, but that's a very concerning thing to be in here. This is why I think that she's not supposed to be a pure hero in this. And it's this nice little waltz, this little piano and bass waltz, and it's this question of, do I look like him? It's the ghost of not. So my dad's father died when he was very young. Not the guy who yelled at Malcolm X. That was his stepfather, came later. And my dad always talked about his dad like a ghost. My dad's dad died when he was like a couple months old. He always talks about him like he was a ghost. Like, that's just it. Just like this figure. Like, what do I do? Do I look like him? Do I feel like him? Do I talk like him? This isn't the first song to ever say that, to ever do that. But it might be the most important because of the context of the rest of the album, how it all builds into it. And there's this whole thing where he's just trying to get love and affection, and he's trying to figure out what it was like without him. And then his mother asks for forgiveness because she says it was her fault that he wasn't there, that it was her choice, which also isn't true, by the way. Okay? If my ex-wife chose to have me not in the picture, I still would have been... I would have fought as hard as I possibly could, which I did. I have full custody now. But you know what I'm saying? I fought as hard as I could for 50-50, and I fought for 75-25, and I fought for 100. I fought for all of it. I love my kids, and I want them with me, and I think that I'm the best parent. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, but she blames herself, and it's an amazing moment. It's an amazingly heavy moment. I don't have the vinyl, but apparently there's a song on there called Mother, and you can find the lyrics. And it goes into this more about how she like almost had a gun charge against him and all this chaos, and this picture of her becomes much more clear. I think this is a reference to the song Mother by John Lennon. Mother, you had me, but I never had you. Father, you left me, but I never left you. Amazing song. I can't listen to it without crying. I'm not even going to sing it anymore. Listen to the song Mother by John Lennon when you have a week free to cry. I think this is kind of in conversation with that because it's this whole problem that he has of not feeling this strong connection and missing this father. And that song ends with, she did a good job. Duh, bitch, I turned out fine. I turned out fine. Look at him. I turned out fine. Say what you want. I turned out fine. Someday I hope. I turned out fine. Look at these kids. I turned out fine. Look at this house. I turned out fine. Look at these bitches. I turned out fine. Like he's just saying it over and over again because he doesn't actually believe it. Again, I can relate. I made an entire album about my mom. It's not great. It's okay. There's some good parts. I wasn't in therapy. Then we get to Balloon, which is kind of a sidetrack here, you know, yeah, horniness and its origins and its consequences, and also feminist, because anytime you talk about female sexuality, it is inherently a feminist act. The Doechii vinyl sold out, so I don't have the Doechii vinyl, but that's the other best rap album of the year. Okay, like right now in my head, it's not the end of the year yet, but I have, you know, roughly Denzel, Doechii, Schoolboy, kind of up there, and some kind of thing. And so he's working this cool. Okay, my main disappointment about the album not being what I thought it would be is I thought it would be almost all African samples, which would tie together to his father being African. It would be a way of showing how social identity is reflected. It's not raining. That's just willow leaves. Hey, Willow Smith was on this album. That you know, that his African identity be represented by this musical style, but that's not it. You know, it's a Japanese song here, and it's mixed in with a Luke song. You know, Luke from 2 Live Crew, "Don't Stop," which itself is the song is actually called "I Wanna Rock," which itself is samples the song "It Takes Two" by Rob Bass. I wanna rock right now. I'm my bass and I came to get down. I could keep going, I'm not going to. Anybody my age could do the entire first verse of that song. Even the ones that never met me like. But it's the banger. It's the banger off the album. It sort of reminds me of Lumberjack, the way it's playing with these samples and mixing them together. And he goes back to these same themes. Why can't I settle down? I like options. Why I hate small talk? Why I hate small talk? I like topics. Hey, Tyler, those things are opposite. When you have sex with lots of different women, you have to do small talk because you can't have an emotionally rich relationship with them. Do you understand the level of topics and depth of conversation you can have when you are happily married? Do you understand the levels of depth you can have of emotional connection to a human being? It rules. It absolutely rules. As long as you're in a good relationship. You're in a bad relationship, you get nothing. But you're in a good relationship, it's the deepest, most fun thing you can possibly have. So anyways, talking about no BBLs. I like A-cups. I'm on my own dick. I don't need your box, which is funny because then later Doechii's gonna come on, very energetic, multiple flows, this great kind of fun sex style. Oui, oui, merci. I'm bi too. I don't need you because I already fucked me. You know, the sort of the power of masturbation as a way to get around patriarchy. I love it. And what's funny is the song's called Balloon. She talks about let out. I have an alternate title for this song. This song should actually be called Queef, because he says, let air out this like a balloon. And she says, air out this bitch like a queef. So, I don't know. I think it should be called Queef. I think that'd be a more interesting song. I think that'd be more memorable. Bone Queef. Bone, as in Thugs and Harmony. I Hope You Find Your Way Home is the final track. And this is where we really are. This is what I think the whole album was about. It's all tied into this one. I said it was Chromacopia and it's all these different colors, but it all just leads into this. I made a bad prediction that it might be a bellhop character that he's playing wearing the full suit. And I'm just realizing now that I'm ringing bells like a bellhop. Not intentional. These are just bells that my daughter plays with. So, but yeah, this is the whole album. This is it. It's this. I Hope You Find Your Way Home. Call Me If You Get Lost. Sweet singing, lazy synth notes behind the beat, nice harmonies, talking about not being drugs and talking about the baby and how he is going to abandon the baby. You know, he brings up all these different themes from the whole album. He says pew pew. He says I'm that N-word and that bitch, which he says earlier as well. He talks about moonwalking, which ties in Michael Jackson. He talks about not having the baby, and he refers to, I think, needing Pampers, again tying in that theme of being a baby, the infantilization of holding on to your youth for too long. It all goes so well together, and the mother comes on to say she's so proud, and there's all this growth and all this movement. And it's all in here. It's all ambiguous. It's not clear. He's not out. The song, much like Mr. Wild and the Big Steppers, is not a victory lap of saying, I did it. I figured it out. It's like, I figured out all the stuff I don't know, and I'm going to work it through with you. This is that first big step where he's saying, props again to Absa. Absa-fucking-lutely on YouTube. Check her out. Not great for the SEO, so I'll put a link to her channel in my description. Yeah, so please go there and subscribe if you haven't there. But like that first big step, that's what this is. And that's what you need. You know, my dad was obsessed with Chinese poetry when I was growing up, and they have a saying, you know, every march of 10,000 steps starts with one, you know, and that's what it is. And this is that first big step. So thank you to Tyler for that. I am not in a position in my life where I needed to hear this, but that's because I'm 47. I'm not 33. By the way, Bowie was 30. Bowie was 3 years younger when he did Heroes. And damn, man. Damn. So these are my Patreons. They help me to buy music. I think I am going to buy this album, but I'm just going to give it to my daughter, my 16-year-old, because she loves Tyler. Man, she loves Tyler. I called the record store, the Record Archive in Rochester, New York, to see if it had come out yet. And they thought that I was like asking for Dugan Nash. They were just like, albums come out on Friday. I'm like, oh no, I know, but he's doing this thing where he releases it on Monday. And like, I could tell she thought that I didn't know what I was talking about, like I was just some dumb customer. And then she like goes off and comes back, and I had to apologize because I was kind of snarky. I was like, yeah, I know, but actually he releases it on Monday because it's a whole, anyway. So she said to check back on Friday. Also, I asked my Patreons if they ever want a shout out. This is the most shout out requests I have ever gotten. This is just absolutely nuts. I have to pull these up, make sure I get them all correct. So we got Nupt, Zach, Josephus, Hobie1, Zane Kordich, Nolan002, Toby Repellent, Quentin Walker, Michael K, Hunter Tice, Obadiah Mumbly, but really, the shout-out's not for Obadiah. The shout-out's for his friend Trong, Super Cammy, maybe Nick Hill, Nikyle, Jeff Caps, Dan Russo, who mentions that he raps like Drake on Sticky and like Kendrick on Thought I Was Dead. I could have said that, but I didn't. He said that. Alex Berry, Cat Elias, Jack Dyson, Carl Joseph Black, Landon, Jonas Boo Castle, and Jared Peterson. Thank you all my Patreons. Let's see how the baby's doing. That pressure, she's still sleeping. I'm doing well. I got to put all this stuff back. Was it fun watching the sunrise with me? Was it worth it? Had the birds come back? No, they're not even awake yet. All right. Well, until next time. Yellow Submarine. There's the camera.